Hello, Earthlings. Take me to your leader. Hey, friends, welcome back to the Daily Dose. Glad you guys have decided to join me yet again for another day as we walk through this journey together. So today we have arrived at day number 83. We're still in the book of 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel coming up soon, but not quite yet. And we're going to be looking at chapters 18 through 20 today, as well as Psalm number 83. So without further ado, let's take a look at what we have got going on. All right, so the first thing that we look at today is Saul's growing fear of David. Okay? We learn that Saul's son Jonathan and David are pretty much becoming besties, right? They're BFFs. They're becoming very close. They're beginning to love each other like brothers. That's how close that they are getting to each other. And what's interesting is whenever Saul would send David on a mission, David would be successful. And that's how it goes when the Lord chooses someone and when that person is walking with the Lord and obeying. That's not all the time, but that's normally how it goes. When a person goes out on a mission on behalf of the Lord will oftentimes go with them and make it successful in whichever way God needs it to be successful, right? We also read that Saul gives David a high rank in the military. Okay, so because David is so successful and does so well when he gets sent out on these missions, Saul is like, hey, I recognize good talent when I see it. I'm going to go ahead and put David in this ranking. I'll raise him up in the military. Now, what's also interesting is that Saul starts to get jealous of David. The people start to look more highly on David than Saul. And what's actually kind of interesting is we read that there's some sort of a song or a chant that the people sing, right? When everybody comes back from the battle. And they say, Saul has killed his thousands, but David has killed his tens of thousands. And so David is getting all this extra fanfare and this extra press and all this positive attention. And so Saul starts getting jealous. He gets paranoid, and we can see him going in and out of these phases or stages of just almost uncontrollable anger. And then he'll calm back down for a little bit. And then he'll go into this rage. And then he'll calm back down for a little bit, but it never lasts. Anyways, because of all this, we also read that Saul was also afraid of David because the Lord was with him. So Saul is recognizing, like, hey, not only am I a little bit jealous of David, but I also recognize that the Lord is with David, right? And that's making Saul a little bit more upset as well. So Saul tries to kill David, and when he does, Jonathan stands up for David. Jonathan's like, look, David is my buddy. So Saul promises not to kill David, okay? So at this point, Saul is still thinking, all right, well, look, my son Jonathan is close to David. They're bestest of friends. Since Jonathan has pleaded for David, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take back what I said. I'm not going to kill David. However, he continues to try. He indeed continues to try. There's a number of instances where Saul will throw a spear at David, and David will dodge, and the spear will stick in the wall, and David escapes and runs away. But David comes back again. David is so loyal to this guy Saul, even though Saul is basically trying to kill him. That kind of takes loving your enemy to a new level, right? David is respectful and loving of this guy Saul, who God had put in charge, and Saul's trying to kill him. So we read that David hides from Saul after these attempts to murder him. David runs off and hides. Jonathan ends up becoming even closer with David while David is on the run. Jonathan finds ways to meet up with him and so on and so forth. So things are still getting hot and heavy as time goes on with Saul's pursuit of David, right? Saul is still looking for David, still trying to murder him, basically. So Jonathan and David get together and they come up with a little plan. They're trying to test the waters and see if David needs to like just hightail it and get out of town for real and just take a long hiatus, or if it's safe for David to kind of hang around on the outskirts and maybe show his face again. So Jonathan says, hey, David, here's what's going to happen. We're going to have this little get together coming up here soon, and I want you to go hide behind, these trees or these rocks where nobody can see you. And then I'm going to find out, how my dad feels and if he's still after you or if everything has calmed back down. And after I find out, I'm going to go outside and I'm going to practice with my bow and arrow while this little get together is going on. And Jonathan said he's going to shoot some arrows. And depending on where he shoots these arrows, he's going to tell his assistant, his sidekick, hey, go get the arrows, go grab them for me. And the sign to David is going to be that when Jonathan's assistant goes out there to retrieve these arrows from the field, wherever they landed, Jonathan is going to either say, hey, they're closer, you need to come back, or he's going to say, hey, they're farther, you need to keep going. Depending on which one of those things Jonathan says, that's going to be a key or a cue to David to tell David, hey, either you can, hang around and I think this is all blowing over, or look, my dad is dead set on killing you. You got to hightail it out of here with the quickness. So that is the gist of what we have got going on today. The one thing that I did want to just briefly touch on, again, is the whole concept that Saul is actively trying to kill David, right? And David very easily could have retaliated and could have taken Saul out, I mean, it almost would have been justified. It would have been self-defense. All these different times that Saul has tried to take out David, but David just turns the other cheek. He runs and, lets Saul have a chance to calm down, and then he comes back. And Saul really isn't even remorseful. I mean, from time to time, we will see where Saul might utter a hasty, brief apology and tell David, please forgive me. I didn't really mean it. But then he goes right back into the same thing. So I think that the grace that David shows to Saul is very, very incredible, and it's a model for all of us. It really is. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that if we're in a situation where someone is actively trying to kill us and we have the opportunity to flee, that we should just hang around. I'm not necessarily justifying that or saying that that should happen in every case, but that's what happened in this case. And David was a man after God's own heart. So I think that there is something to be learned from this. I think one of the lessons that this teaches us is in regards to possibly our employment or even our government leadership, right? If we work for somebody who is harsh on us, if we work for a boss who is rude, disrespectful, just downright nasty, I think we need to take the attitude that David took and still respect that person, right? Still respect them and still try to love on them, as difficult as that may be. I think that the same thing applies with our leaders, with our politicians, right? If if when Donald Trump was president, if you didn't like Donald Trump, that's okay, but God still commands us to honor our leaders and to love them, even if you think that they're your enemy. Same thing, now with Biden in office. For any of us that may not be too keen on Joe Biden, you know what? God allowed him to get placed in power, right? And we need to respect that. And we don't need to be actively trying to cause divisiveness and division. We need to be supportive, and we need to be loving, even if we don't agree with some of the methodologies that may be implemented by certain leaders. Now, granted, that's not to say that we should go along and not voice our concern if an elected leader is trying to pursue sin or trying to command us to pursue sin. But anyways, that's all I got for you guys for today. Thanks so much for sticking around. Thanks for listening. And I believe I've got my situation taken care of with my video recording software. So we should be relatively problem-free from here going on out. So thanks for joining me. And until we meet again, friends, deuces.